Magic Arena is a great place to play Magic on a budget, but there is one wrinkle to that being the wild card. We can't fill our deck with 20-cent janky rares because there are no 20-cent janky rares on Arena. Every rare costs the same, just the one wild card, and they're hard to come by. So I sat down a while ago to try and approach this from two angles. One, what's the cheapest deck you can make on Arena in a non-rotating format? And two, can that deck win games? Because no good to you if it doesn't win. So the astute listener will listen to that and say, what do you mean you sat down a while ago to work on this problem? Did it take you a really long time to come up with something? Honestly, no, it didn't. What took a long time was coming up with the courage to make a video about it because I care what you guys think about me, and what I came up with was pretty dumb. Kind of good, kind of interesting, kind of genius, but mostly dumb. Mostly really, really dumb. Let's get started. Now, when I was making this video, I originally felt the need to put the explanation about how this deck isn't actually a joke up front, but I eventually realized I can only put off actually showing you the deck that I'm talking about for so long. But before I do, please, please, please stick around for the me explaining the many merits of this deck part. There are more than may immediately be apparent, I promise. Okay, here goes. Here's the deck. And yeah, that's all of it. You played these 42 cards, 18 lands, and it plays out like this. The first thing you do is mulligan until you have an otherworldly gaze and a source of untapped blue mana in your hand. It doesn't really matter how many tries this takes. If they're the only two cards in your hand, you still have a decent shot of winning. So on turn 1, you're going to play your blue land, wait until the end of the opponent's turn, and cast Otherworldly Gaze. Your second turn is going to look pretty similar. You're going to play a land, wait until the end of the opponent's turn, and flashback Otherworldly Gaze. After having done this, you'll have been able to make sure you're hitting the land drops you need by putting lands on top, if you don't have them on your hand already, and filling your graveyard with as many Dragon's Approaches as possible. This sets you up for turn 3. We're going to play a land, making sure you have a red source, and cast Dragon's Approach from your hand. If things have gone right up to this point, the approach will do 3 damage to your opponent, let you exile 4 approaches from your graveyard to put Velomachus into play from your deck. You attack with Velomachus for 5 damage, and cast another approach from Velomachus' attack trigger. That's 11 damage on turn 3. If you don't have enough approaches in your graveyard to start doing this on turn 3, you cast them from your hand or use other gazes to find them until you do have enough in your graveyard and the plan comes online. And this is usually no later than turn 4. And on the next turn, you do it again. You attack Velomachus, use this trigger to cast an approach, and then follow it up with an approach from your hand. 11 more damage, and that's usually enough to do the trick. And it's really consistent. Now, to be absolutely clear about this, I am not saying this is a good Magic deck. It's frankly not good at playing games of Magic the Gathering. It's not even really a deck, it's more of a test. It asks your opponent, can you remove or erase a 5/5 Vigilance Haste flying creature that will kill you in 2 turns starting on turn 3 or 4? And it asks that question really consistently. The inconsistent part is your opponent's response. Kill spells, planeswalkers, bounce spells, chump blockers, clocks that are faster than yours, life gain that outpaces your damage, graveyard hate, they all exist. Your opponents will pass this test a lot, probably more often than not. But a surprising amount of the time, they won't. I'd say that in my experience playing this deck and testing it, they fail about 40% of the time, which means you win about 40% of the time. And 40% admittedly isn't a great win rate, but it sure is a great win rate for a deck this cheap. So how cheap are we talking here? Well, starting with the elephant in the room, this is really a Magic Arena deck. Yes, it's legal in paper formats like Pioneer, and if you want to have fun and play a silly deck at your FNM, go for it. But it does perform better in best-of-1 matches with unprepared opponents, and it isn't actually that cheap in paper. It's still cheap compared to top-tier decks, but Dragon's Approach is a $2 card, and you need 35 of them. You can do the math on that one. But on Arena, those 35 cards cost you 4 common wild cards. So on the left here I have the cheapest version, and on the right I have a less cheap version. The only real difference is that in the less cheap version, you're maximizing your efficiency by playing extra dual lands, an extra copy of Velomachus, so you don't lose if 2 copies are in the top 10 cards of your deck. And you have a sideboard companion, all of which adds to the wildcard cost of the deck. But you can do perfectly fine with the cheapest version. Just 2 mythics, 8 rares, and 8 commons. And if you want, you can even play without the rare lands. This would just cost you 2 mythics and 8 commons total. I'd probably cut an approach and play 12 islands and 8 mountains. It will legitimately hurt the deck's ability to perform without the dual lands, but it'll still work. So, should you play this deck? Well, if you want a cheap deck on Arena, absolutely. If you want a pretty casual deck to play with your brain off or to grind games with to build a larger collection, sure. If you love cackling statistically while your opponent, who's playing a tier 1 deck, disconnects out of rage, unable to fathom how they're possibly losing to your pile of trash, yeah, play it. It's not bad, I promise. I promise it's not a bad deck. The downsides are that though it's powerful and it's consistent, it's not particularly resilient or flexible, and playing it does get a little old after a while. But if you go in with your expectations set correctly and understand what this deck will and will not do for you, it can be a lot of fun and a truly great choice if you're looking for something wickedly cheap. But if any of you ever beat me with this deck, I'm throwing my monitor out of a window. Okay, well, normally that'd be the end of the video, roll credits. But I've met enough Magic players by now to know that a lot of you are just going to assume that this deck can't be good at all because it's weird and plays bad cards. So I've thrown some gameplay footage on the end to prove it's kind of legit. The gameplay footage is sped up so it won't take long to look at, and the games are fast, and I think the videos do a good job capturing the deck's true nature. You'll be able to see its power, its weaknesses, so you know what you might be getting into if you spend your wildcards on it. Alright, so we're hopping into our first event. Here we go. Our opening hand doesn't have an Otherworldly Gaze in it, so we send it back. And we keep going until we finally have a hand. I think we're down to 4 cards, but honestly that doesn't matter at all for us. Our opponent's on some kind of green list, probably mono green. It's actually a pretty decent matchup for us as long as they don't have an early Cavalier of Thorns that can block our Velomachus. This gaze is pretty good, it gets us 2 approaches. So we need 2 hits on our next gaze to go off on turn 3, as well as a land. And there we have it. Perfect setup for us. And they just played an old growth troll, which doesn't do a lot for them against our 5/5. Get in for an insane amount of damage. They think for a while. Hover over the card. And this is where you can see the smoke coming out of their ears. And we win. They don't have anything from here.
Stand down.
We don't block because it doesn't matter. And there you go. We just beat a tier 1 deck. Going into our second match here, we have a perfect opener, so we keep it. We need our untapped blue source, so we'll send in the steam vents. Ooh, that's a bad hit. We might have just lost this game. Yeah, if they have anything resembling a reasonable clock, we don't win off of hitting 3 lands with our first Otherworldly Gaze. And it looks like they've got a pretty good clock. So we can cast an approach here, but it doesn't do us any good, really. We're going to die, so we scoop it up. Alright, game 3. We find our gaze on the second hand, we put back an approach, and we do it again. Another bad hit off of approach. We find our third land, but only one approach in the yard. So unless this second one hits 3 approaches, we're in a lot of trouble. It does hit 3 approaches, but Thalia puts us in a bit of a bind anyway, because we can't cast our approach like we would want to. And so this is extra sad because we can't cast the extra spell because of Thalia. So we're kind of doing the thing, but we're kind of not doing the thing. And then they take our Velomachus. They have a great clock. We're not doing a lot. That's it. But honestly, if they didn't have that Cathar, we still might have been able to do it through the Thalia. Alright, our third match. Good second hand. Probably against Mono Blue Spirits here. Not a great hit on the first gaze. Mausoleum Wander is a little annoying, but counterspells actually don't hurt us as much as it seems like they would, because we can usually just cast another approach the next turn. So we did only get 3 approaches in our yard on our first 2 gazes, so we're going to have to hard cast a couple. They counter it all over. Not a lot we can do there. That feels like a pretty bad matchup. Alright, entering another event. Here we go. Game 1. First hand seems great. Mono green again. And then here, this is a misplay, because I forgot we were actually playing 3 copies of Velomachus in this list, so I saw 2 and thought that we were in trouble. There's me checking it, realizing I'm being silly. So that was a scoop that could have totally been a win. So keep that in mind, that we totally flubbed at least one game here. Pitching some approaches. Do it all again the next turn. And we're set up nicely for Velomachus. Get this every time it works. The opponent's sitting there just thinking. So funny. They gain 2 life, but they're counting on us not having one in our hand, but we do. Send back the first hand, second hand, third hand. We'll keep the fourth hand. It really doesn't matter. You can maul to 4, you can maul to 3. It's all fine. Ugh, that is very concerning, because that's almost certainly going to be faster than us. Yep. So our plan works beautifully. We have the turn 3 Velomachus, It's just one of those rare instances where it's not going to be enough to race what they're doing on board. So if they didn't have the kill, we would definitely win this game on turn 4, but they were on the play and have an Illuminator Virtuoso that's just going to, I think, absolutely blast us here. Yeah. That's it right there. Game over. So we didn't win this one, but it was so close. The deck did its thing, and the thing was powerful. So we're 1-2, going into match 4. Keep our second hand here, put Valmaka's back. Land situation's perfect. That's a great hit off the top. And we're all set for our turn 2. It looks like we're going to have the turn 3 on this play. Our opponent is looking at our graveyard and wondering what we're doing. 3 again. So it can't get better than that. Okay. So this game, I'd like you to just pay attention to how meaningless counterspells can be in the face of endless Dragon's Perches, one after the other after the other. That's 3 counterspells in a row out of blue-white control. Do they have a 4th? Because we have a 4th Dragon's Approach. Okay, well, let's do it again. That life they gained off the Absorb ended up mattering an awful lot here. But okay, they get rid of that. They're at 1. We play another Dragon's Approach. Will you look at that? That is funny. You can't tell me that's not funny. There we are, 2-2, going into game 5. I didn't promise you success. I promised you a 40% success rate. So if we lose this game, we're already at 40% for this event. Playing with house money. It's not a great hit on our first gaze. Might be in trouble if they have a really fast start here at a mono red. That stinks. Oh well, we're not totally dead. We'll try more otherworldly gazes. We can play and flashback this one this time. It might be enough to get us there. It's not looking great though. Maybe. I think the bigger problem is even if we do it on turn 4 here, or turn 3, completely lost track of what turn this is. I don't think it's going to be enough to keep us from dying at 7. So ordinarily, we don't block with Velomachus. Except we kind of have to here. Like, we never want to put it at risk. It just never feels worth it to die to a pump spell or a whatever. But we had to there, and they killed us anyway. So there you go. 40%. 2 wins, 3 losses. Okay, entering our 3rd event here. It's going to be more of the same, folks. Send the hand back. Keep the hand. Put an approach on the bottom. So we'll see here. I'm reasonably sure we're going to be faster than this start. But that's a terrible hit off of Otherworldly Gaze Part 1. That makes us very sad. Better luck on the second one, though. We're not in terrible shape. We don't have the turn 3, but we have the turn 4. So next turn we'll just hardcast an approach, and we already have 4 in the yard, so it'll trigger. They're counting that in our graveyard right now. So we go for it. They are presenting a lot of damage next turn, but we're going to get them down to 1 here. And they have 2 Battlefield Forges in play. Yeah, it's not going to be enough to do it. We were faster than a very fast deck. Even with a little bit of a setback there. Had to wait till turn 4 to do it instead of turn 3. First hand goes back. Keep the second one. Put an approach on the bottom. You've seen it before. Right. Having just pain lands here doesn't help against a very fast deck on the play. I don't love our chances here, but you never know. Let's see how it goes. We got 2 approaches, that's good, but we're already at 14. I don't don't love this. Okay, well, we're doing our thing on turn 3, but being on the play against this deck, I think, is just not quite enough. Yeah, so close, so close. Alright, 1 and 1. Perfect opener. We keep those. Not a great hit on the first gaze, but finding a second gaze is nice. It kind of assures us that we'll at least be able to do it on turn 4. So this puts 4 in the yard. We don't actually need the other gaze here necessarily. So this will give us our 4th approach and set us up just as well as the otherworldly gaze would. And they counter it, but we just wanted it in the graveyard. We weren't actually caring about the 3 damage at all. So here's the turn 4. They have 4 open mana, so they've got to have something for this. And they do. They tuck it away, which is a bummer. But hilariously, if they just paid 1 mana to bounce it back to our hand, it would have been worse for us than putting it back in our deck. So here we're going to make sure we cast another Otherworldly Gaze on our draw step before we draw, to give us a chance at being able to Dragon's Approach again here if we have a good mill hit, which we don't, unfortunately, so we'll just keep casting approaches. We have 3 in the yard now. It's not looking great. Been some weird draws. I think for the first time in my life we're gonna put Gigantha into our hand. They have some mainboard graveyard hate that sets us back a little bit. Just try another approach. Hilariously, we're getting kind of close, just 3 damage to them a turn. Maybe they were right to censor that first one. But then they counter it, we draw another one. We happen to not have enough red mana to play it again. And I think we pretty obviously lose from here. Well, we can try. If this all goes through, we actually do it. But they have the answer, so that's a good game. But even through all that, if they'd happen to not have the removal spell there, I think we get there. Yeah, now they're just rubbing it in. They had everything, and that's just gonna happen sometimes. That's magic, my friends. Alright, we're 1 and 2. Gotta hit that sweet 2-3 record to prove my my 40% win rate claims. Beautiful mill. Angels is a terrible matchup for us, just gonna be honest. Not only do they have huge flying creatures that can actually block us profitably, but they just gain so much life. This deck is designed to do 22 damage on by turn 4, and they just stop caring about that. We are putting pressure on them here, though. They either stabilize or they don't from here. And they're not gonna. We're gonna get there. Ooh-wee. Not a great matchup, but sometimes things just line up well. 2 and 2, going into our 5th match. Perfect opener, we'll keep it. Feels like more angels, and I bet we see exactly why this matchup isn't great. We can't get lucky twice in a row. Yeah, this feels like a no-doubter. There's no way we're getting through. But still, even without getting through, even in a terrible matchup, you see the deck does its thing. The deck does its thing. Oh my goodness. Just end me. Yeah. Good game, opponent. 2 and 3, 40%, just like I told you. And that does it. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like the video. And please reach out to me with any questions, either in the comments or on Twitter at Monetary Mentor. I look forward to hearing from you, and until then, be kind to yourself and have fun out there.